welcome to the PowerScore LSAT podcast. This is Dave Kaloran in Napa Valley.
And John Denning in Los Angeles.
John, is it sunny in Los Angeles today?
Yeah, I can tell you from the other side of a window. It is sunny in Los Angeles today.
I just want to know if you could see the sun,
No, I can actually, but yeah, it's from behind a screen. It's never been clearer. It's never been less smoggy.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it really is.
I'm glad to know that the PowerScore Los Angeles headquarters for quarantine is, holding its own down there.
Yeah. This is strange times, my man.
Strange times indeed, which often makes me think that I should start drinking heavily. So I am indeed doing that.
It's fun to think that you needed an excuse. But yes.
However, I know you're drinking as well, and I am interested in what your choice is for the day.
Well, I'm going to let you actually give yours first, but only because mine is so closely tied to the song that we've chosen.
Well, let's just run through the entirety of what it is that we intend to talk about here.
Fair.
First off, the episode title, a personal favorite of mine. I felt very clever when I came up with it.
Yeah.
It is Fear and Loathing in LSAT Vegas.
All credit to you. Oof.
But this was also partially inspired by the musical choice, and it all will wrap together, as it often does when we put things into their place. And the song is by Kenny Rogers. So a little country song, and of course this is because Kenny Rogers has died in the last week. And I was never, and still not a big country fan, but I think you have to be dead to the world to not at least appreciate Kenny Rogers.
You gotta respect Kenny.
Yeah, man. He was a classic. And so the song here today is, I think, probably his best and most famous song, The Gambler.
The Gambler.
And that'll actually relate to what we're talking about, because we're going to talk about some of the decisions that our friends at LSAC have made, which have, I think, brought Fear and Loathing into the LSAT world.
When to hold them, when to fold them.
Yeah.
When to walk away.
So since Kenny was going for The Gambler, and that's a little bit of Las Vegas, I went for a little bit of throwback drink. And for me, it is a 57 Chevy.
Which you have to explain because no one knows what that is.
That's false. But I will explain.
Kenny was the only other one, and he's dead. So
I don't think so, and I will tell a story about 57 Chevys that will make you appreciate the fact that I'm not the only person in the world who's aware of them.
Okay.
But this is a drink that is based around Southern comfort. It's a little SoCo with some vodka and Grand Marnier and Amaretto. So right away, if you think about that, that is a heavy-hitting lineup of alcohol that we are mixing together.
Yeah.
And then you can throw various things in there, usually like pineapple and orange juice, which is what we've chosen here. Although, I'm going to be honest, the supplies are going to run out at some point, and my drink selection is going to narrow considerably. Not with the alcohol. I got tons of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've seen your house. You're going to be fine on alcohol, but the pineapples.
I've got more wine than a human should have. But the mixers are going to be a big problem in the coming days. So this could be the last of the bizarre drinks. But this ends up being like a really red drink. I like to throw a cherry in it because I'm extra that way. And the story that I will tell only very briefly is I got pretty hammered on these when I was like 19. And it was one of those nights. I was working in a restaurant. Yes, I was a busboy. It was a great job. I loved it. It was a party restaurant. And after everything was done, we went upstairs to the club with all the waitresses and we're having a great time. And that's one of the last things I remember about that night.
Yeah.
But the waitresses kept giving us 57 Chevys. It was me and a friend of mine. And I must have had, 8 or 9 of them. So clearly I'm not the only person in the world who knows what a 57 Chevy is. All the people working at Stone Wings on the Lake knew what it was too.
To be fair, it was 1957 at the time. So I feel like that probably had something to do with it.
That is false.
That is false. Anyone listening to this, Dave's not that old.
I wasn't even born in 1957. It's the wrong decade.
A 57 Chevy reminds me of late nights in Havana, Cuba, of all places, where that's exactly the only option you have to get home.
That's the cars they all have, is like 50s and 60s vehicles down there.
Yeah, exactly.
You had a good trip there.
I did. 57 Chevy. I've gone with a Kenny Rogers inspired drink the Gambler, and this is because I'm truly out of stock. It's literally just bullet rye, and I put some lemon in it. I think there's supposed to be more to it, but that's the best I could do.
I'll tell you this much, though. When you said that, I thought to myself, he's having a Kenny Rogers? That sounds like a drink you could order. We need to come up with a recipe for a drink called the Kenny Rogers.
We do.
It's like a Manhattan or an old fashioned. I'm having a Kenny Rogers.
I would totally drink a Kenny Rogers. Absolutely. All right, we'll figure out. Coming to you next week, we'll figure out what a Kenny Rogers includes.
Our new career as mixologist takes off.
So, Fear and Loathing in LSAT Vegas. Again, a nice title. R.I.P. Kenny. What are we going to talk about today?
Let's talk about all the developments that we've seen really in the last week, as well as how this is going to affect things going forward. And it's really interesting because in the last year, if someone had said at the beginning of the year, how many episodes do you think you'll do where you just talk about what LSAC has done or policy changes or things that have occurred? I would have been, maybe 2 or 3 times at most.
Yeah, we'd have both undershot it. I can promise that.
By double digits, we would have undershot it because so much has happened in the last year. And certainly right now, this is all the effect of the COVID-19 and the coronavirus, which is unpredictable for everybody and terrible across the board. But lots of different things have happened with them, and watching them try to navigate these turbulent waters has been interesting, especially as a commentator. So let's talk about what we know about what they're doing, what we think is going to happen, what they've done so far, and the pluses and minuses of it.
Yeah.
And
it's
kind of
interesting you
break
mentioned
it
it that way, too, the turbulent water. Sometimes I feel like I'm on the shore looking out. Sometimes I feel like I'm on the ship.
Going down.
Yeah. Headed at the rocks. It's been a very strange position to be in, to watch all this unfold. But it hasn't been all, God, I feel almost bad saying this, but it hasn't been all bad.
No, definitely not. Not at least as far as the policies and some of the reactions that they've had.
Some of the reactions they've made, I think, are actually admirable.
I think so. Let's start with the very first one, which they formally announced, I believe it was last Thursday, and that is score resurrection, or as they've called it, score review and restore is the option as they've kind of talked about it. And this was interesting to me because I first heard rumor of it about a week earlier. There was a message that went to a listserv of law deans that got out, and just as a side note, anything that goes on any listserv to law deans or anybody else, it gets out within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So nothing's ever going to be secret there. And so that was something that came out, and we saw that they were talking about this option of bringing them back. And then relatively quickly, they actually made it happen. And I color me surprised on this.
Me too.
Actually, it almost stopped me from it. I was like speechless. How do I describe myself on this? I was like, what? I didn't think they'd move this fast. And I thought it was revealing a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about the policy. Do you want to kind of go through the policy?
Yeah, I think we should. It feels a little bit like, if I may, Easter come early.
For some, yes.
Yeah, for sure. And what they're essentially doing is letting anyone who was registered for the March or the April tests, both of which we'll talk more about, who has a prior test that they canceled. They're allowing them to, and I like your word, resurrection, any score in the last 5 years that any registrants from those tests have, they're allowed to actually preview the cancellation, preview the score that they canceled, and determine whether they want to put it back onto their record.
Exactly.
Is that a fair summation, you think?
It is. And if you have multiple cancels, by the way, they will show you only the highest score.
Yeah.
So you won't get like, oh, I got that score here. Oh, then I did a couple points better there.
Which I'm glad they didn't force you to either resurrect all of them or none. You can, you can see your best option.
Yeah, I think they did that, by the way, to restrict information available to people.
I agree with you, actually, on that.
Really good test takers could make some deductions about those exams based upon information, especially if they collected it and shared it with other test takers.
Yeah, what if you had 3 canceled scores and you could actually see your progression or see what had happened when? They don't want you to preview that.
So they give you the option of seeing it, and seeing it does not mean accepting it. It just means that you get a chance to decide at that point, do I want to keep it or not keep it?
Or do I want to, send it to schools, essentially?
Yeah, and if you don't keep it, it just disappears. You're not going to get this option again in the future, presumptively. However, if you do keep it, it is permanent.
Yeah.
You are then stuck with it.
But I mean, come
happily
on.
or unhappily.
Yeah. At that point, you'd have to know what you were doing. So I don't think
You
anyone's
made your
going to keep
bed.
a score and then turn around and a month later be like, oh, no. You'll know what the number was. You'll be able to determine whether you want to make it public.
That's exactly right. Now, according to what LSAC said, there were about 3,000 test takers who were affected by this policy. So there were 3,000 people who were registered for March or April who had a prior canceled score. Of those 3,000, about half of them, 1,500 or so, had no score at all on record. So they'd only canceled scores. So this would allow that 1,500 people or so to get back in the game.
Yeah, and this to me was one of the more interesting points of this is this actually allows a lot of people who maybe had canceled a score they wish they had now to apply for scholarships or to negotiate with schools, maybe get off a wait list.
Yeah, which is, admirable. I think there's a couple questions that kind of came out about it. And the first thing I'll point out is that in the original letter of the dean's listserv, they were very clear about this is about attempting to create more applicants, more viable applicants, improve the standing of the applicants that are affected by this. And, I've said this many times in the past that a lot of times students look at LSAC and they think, this is a company that administers the LSAT. I'm their client. I should be a priority. And I always try to remind people that that's never how it's been, that the law schools are the people who make up the council. They are the primary client. And as I read that letter to the deans, I thought to myself, this really shows that they are in service of the law schools.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I see students complaining about, well, they're not doing this for me. I'm like, you're not really their main client. You're the commodity. And that sounds harsh and probably is harsh, but it's also, I think, very, very accurate. And I've thought that for years and years.
Yeah, students are currency, not clients. And that's a shame on the one hand, but look, let's just call a fact a fact.
It certainly has been that way, but I would be remiss if I didn't stop for a second and say, recently they've shown a much different approach, and I appreciate that, and I hope that it continues to go on. So
I'm glad you pointed that out, actually, especially now more than ever. It's appreciated, I think, that they're looking out for individuals as opposed to just institutions.
I think they're trying to service a lot of different groups, and that can be a real challenge.
Yeah,
so
it's tough.
Either way.
This is an individual exercise, application, whatever you want to call it, endeavor. So I was happy to see this come about. Is it fair, do you think?
My
and
initial
obviously that
reaction
question is a very layered one.
I'm willing to
we could peel that
go
onion.
on. I'm willing to go on record with my feelings about this. I always am willing to go on record about my feelings.
Yes, that's kind of why we're here.
At least is when it comes to the LSAT and LSAC and all that kind of stuff. Is it fair?
I realize how open-ended that is, so we probably should unravel it, but
I will. Look, I don't think it's fair. That's the first thing. However, am I glad that they got the opportunity? Yes. So let me explain myself, because some people probably were like, what do you mean? This is great for students. It is great for students. If you happen to be registered for March or April, you get an advantage. You get a window into the past that somebody who took the February LSAT or November last year and who, for whatever reason, didn't register for March or April, because of this quirk of scheduling, they don't get this advantage.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I think is unfair. I think they should have taken everybody in the past year and said, you all get this. It should have been like Oprah. You got to look at your old scores. You got to look at your old scores. And so forth.
That's a great line.
So,
everyone look under their seats. LSAT scores.
There's your old LSAT score. Or as, we've been calling it on Twitter, your zombie LSAT score that could be coming back from the dead.
That's really what this is.
So this is what I dislike about
Hence
it.
My Easter reference, by the way. But yeah.
Yeah, if you just suddenly had signed up for this test, even if it was a last minute thing, you now have this option. And most of the people probably won't take it, but some will. And there's always that situation where I was like, oh, I didn't realize I'd canceled a 167. I thought I'd maybe didn't get higher than a 160.
I mean, is there any downside to pursuing this, to investigating it? Because you don't have to choose to display a canceled score, right? Like you can simply be like, that last November that I didn't think I did well on, what do you know, 171 or whatever.
Yeah, there's no downside to that. All of a sudden it becomes a viable score. And we'll talk about the timeline for that in just a moment. But Yeah, there's nothing wrong with looking at the score, and there's nothing wrong with saying that you don't want it or that you do want it. There's not going to be like, oh, they resurrected a zombie LSAT score. Weird. Then no one's going to care. It's not going to show up on your record that way. It's going to show up as an LSAT score.
Right.
I just feel like everybody should have been given this opportunity who's in this cycle, and therefore some people through a, you know, whenever their timeline was, maybe getting ready early and being at the front of the cycle, they're now disadvantaged, quite possibly, not certainly, but possibly by this actually happening. And that to me is the unfairness.
Yeah.
So I would love to see them open this up for everybody. They did it for the July administration last year. We know they can do it. Just do it. Make it happen.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to, but that's what I would do if I was in charge. I would wave the magic wand so that everybody was affected equally, not just these people taking these spring LSATs.
Yeah. We'll talk more about what might happen beyond April and how that could potentially influence some of this too. I could see these policies changing as you and I explore future dates, frankly.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Let's get to that when we talk about what happens in April and June and so
forth. What about the more immediate timeline of this? What's going to happen with this particular policy?
So when they announced this on Friday, they said it would take a couple of days to show up in the appropriate inbox of each candidate who was this was applicable to. So it should be showing up now. And once they get the response from you, if you want to restore your score, it's going to take several more business days for that to actually appear. And then once that has occurred, as is typical, their system will update the law schools that you have a new score report. Yeah. And then the law school will typically pull that immediately, have it downloaded into their system. So
yeah, my reading of it was between like 3 to 5 business days for the total turnaround. Is that about right? Yeah.
Yeah. Once it starts, once you get into that process, you're probably looking at about 5 days maximum.
Perfect. Yeah.
So
it's not bad.
For a whole new thing that they're doing, pretty good. I would say compliments to them for coming up with the idea and then acting on it super quick. So
pretty good.
That is the word nimble has not been the word that I would use to describe them from the past. And
agile, efficient, expedient. No, it's funny. I heard that in Larry David's voice when you said it. It was great. Pretty.
It was funny. On Friday, they did the seminar. So let's talk about the seminar. Because
that's where a lot of this information came out. Was a couple days ago, Friday, the 27th of March, I believe is when that was.
Exactly right. And they actually used the word nimble in that seminar several times.
Yes, I heard Kelly say it.
Which I thought was which is interesting. So this seminar came up, and what my real hope was is that they would announce the cancellation of the April LSAT. I'd mentioned it on Twitter. I was like, you need to cancel it now. It's not happening. Let's wake up to the truth here instead of just delaying things.
Yeah, so let me clarify that, Dave, because neither one of us wants any LSAT to be canceled.
Correct.
So when you say, like, I hope they cancel it, that is born out of only the deepest concerns for safety and well-being. I hope they can run the April LSAT. I just can't imagine a world where they do.
That's exactly it.
So
I don't want them to cancel it in the abstract, but reality tells me it must be canceled, and it should be canceled immediately.
Perfect. And if they're going to do it, and it seems almost inevitable, do it now. Why wait?
We'll come back to that point. Sure. But they went ahead and had this seminar Friday morning. And the thing I liked about the seminar was they were addressing it head on. How is the virus situation going to affect the LSAT and law school admissions? And I thought this was actually a really welcome timing for this kind of thing. So oftentimes they have these seminars online where they talk about things that I think are very much about law schools and what law schools would be interested in, not so much people who are actually applying to law school and taking the LSAT. So a lot of times it doesn't really interest me. This one is right in the wheelhouse of everybody who's kind of applying to this and kind of going through this process. So I thought they'd get a pretty good turnout. You can't tell, but it looked like there was a fair amount of chatter going on. But very early on in the chat, I think it was Susan Krinsky noted there won't be a decision until April 10th. I think it was her name that I saw in the chat behind that. And if I'm right, good for me. If I'm not, apologies to whoever it was that made that point.
Right.
But I immediately said that. I was like, I really had wished that they would at least announce an update on this. And instead, they're clearly going to punt it until a little bit later. So,
do you think they'll wait until the deadline they've essentially assigned themselves? The 10th of April?
I hope not.
Yeah.
I fear they will.
I'd be a little shocked if they go to like the 9th or the 10th.
I've been pressuring them a little bit.
I know you have, and they've
They're
been
aware
listening.
of it.
And yeah, exactly. I know they're aware.
It's kind of like it's giving your friends a hard time. Like, come on, pull the trigger on this. You going to start dating, or are you guys going to break up? It's time to break up with April.
That's the analogy you use. It wasn't like you guys should get married. It's a breakup.
Well, don't you think they kind of really want to go through with the wedding in April
like,
to the LSAT, and I'm like, give it up, guys. This relationship is doomed.
Yeah, this is doomed.
So
anyway,
they have not
the looming
made that
divorce.
decision.
I know you're pushing it.
Yeah. I would say that the rest of the seminar was focused largely on trying to assuage concerns that applicants have about applying and deadlines.
Yeah.
And they talked about their juggling a lot. They tried to be reassuring. You had a couple of deans on there, especially from my general area of like high school. You had the University of Minnesota dean.
Minnesota, yeah.
I'm a big fan of the University of Minnesota. My parents and my sister all went there. You had the University of Wisconsin. Obviously, I dislike them. Kidding. I thought their dean was excellent. I wasn't familiar with her, and I thought she was really good.
She was really good.
They had the dean of Oregon, another school that I love and I'm a big fan of. And I think, was it San Diego? Yeah, it was down in San Diego, was the fourth dean.
Yeah.
I think there's another one floating around in there. So they talked a lot about like, look, we're going to be flexible. Talk to us about this. This is a juggling process for us. It's new to us too. Yeah. And I think that point is being lost here, is that students want law schools to make immediate decisions, extend deadlines, push back deposits, and so forth. And I think a lot of that will happen. The problem is they're going through this just like everyone else is. And so it feels like it's just a big tidal wave to them, and it's difficult to just immediately step out of that kind of like wave of information, look at it on the whole and be like, things are crazy. We need to start making actions and taking steps right now. So I think once some of this settles in a little bit and they get used to it, they'll start to open up the deadlines a little bit more. Yeah. It's beginning to happen already. I think it's going to continue to happen. And I think as we see what plays out with the April LSAT, that's when we'll get a lot of the school responses from this.
I think you're right. Yeah, it's also like very much in flux. The vibe I got from that discussion that we watched was that schools are at least aware and responsive. They're attentive to the fact that things are changing, and they're going to do their best for their students, potential students.
Yeah,
which I thought was a really welcome message.
It totally was. I got a lot of sympathy from them, and, we understand and we'll be reasonable. And if you have a situation, we'll work with you. And I think that is extremely welcome.
Yeah.
However, what I'm looking for is the school that stands up and says, this is a crazy situation. We're all trying to play it by ear, and that's the wrong way to do this. What we need to do right now is reconfigure how everyone is applying. Extend these deadlines, just right away to ease concerns. And things like that. And I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing anybody just stand up and take a leadership role.
Yeah, to institutionalize permanence or sort of like future certainties. I haven't seen that either. But my sympathies.
Tough.
Yeah,
you're seeing that at every single level. At the top level of our country, there's a certain complete uncertainty over how to handle this. In the county that I live in, they didn't even want to call, they didn't even want to say that we had an issue, even though we're quite close to one of the epicenters. Yeah. They tried to deny it. My daughter's school doesn't seem to have a clue how to deal with the fact that nobody's coming to school anymore. So law school deans and LSAC, they're just part of a whole sea of people who don't know how to deal with what is truly an extraordinary set of circumstances.
Yeah. If I can give ourselves logistically, whatever you want to call it, a little bit of a long-distance high five, a well-hand-washed high five. We were quick on this. We moved everybody online. We started to train tutors and instructors to go online. Like, we jumped on this pretty quickly. I would like to see the same kind of responsiveness.
We had no choice.
Across the board.
Yeah, in that matter, in my opinion, we sent everyone in our office home like 2 weeks ago because it was like, there's no reason for us to all be in a situation where we're at risk when we can operate without it. We do it during hurricanes. We can do it right now.
Yeah.
I just wish that I could see in each of these areas, whether it's the country, my daughter's school, law schools, you name
all of it. I know. I'm a bit of a hypocrite in this, in that I've got a quarantine buddy here who's maybe overstayed her welcome. We'll see.
I'm not going to
She's
send
on
her
day. She's on day like 10. I don't know what's going on.
We'll be certain to
But
text her this. Like, yeah, you might want to
no,
listen to
don't
like
send her a
whatever
link to
minute we're
this.
at, 20 or
Please, I
something.
hope she can't hear me through the door. She made me do yoga the other day. That's when I was like, you gotta go.
Well, you know, you control your own domain there.
I suppose.
That's
Do I?
we could ask about your love life, but clearly you're covered for now. Anyway,
something like that. But anyway, let's hope that schools get on the ball sooner as opposed to later. Let's hope LSAC makes a call before the April 10th deadline. I think they will. You don't. So we'll see who's right on that.
Well, we'll see. I actually said I thought that it was possible. I just feared that it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
Part of the reason April is so important is because there's a huge number of people registered for it.
There are.
It's
almost 20,000, 19,500, I think, are registered for April at the moment.
Perfect. And that's a lot of people. So if they pull the trigger and cancel it, that's when you'll start to see law schools say to themselves, oh, this really is serious. Even though I can't imagine having sent all their students to online classes, they don't realize it's serious.
Yeah.
But the admissions offices seem to be lagging. That's when we'll see the law schools start to break the deadlock. But as I've said before, someone could stand up, take the lead. I don't care whether it's the ABA. I don't care whether it's Kelly at LSAC. Somebody needs to start leading the charge and pushing people. But we'll just have to hope that sooner or later everybody wakes up to this.
Well, it does feel inevitable. So as we look then down the pipeline in the next few months, there's obviously several LSATs planned. Let's talk about them.
Let's talk about the very next LSAT that is currently scheduled to go, and that would be the April 25th, 2020 domestic, U.S. Canadian LSAT.
Yeah, this is the one we just mentioned. There are 19,500 people registered for at the moment. I imagine about 20,000 soon to be disappointed people. But what do you think's about to happen here?
I think they absolutely are going to be forced to cancel this, and I don't think there's any doubt whatsoever that it cannot happen.
Yeah, this is the one they've assigned the April 10th deadline on an announcement for, whether it takes them that long or not.
And I'm thankful, very, very thankful that they assigned that April 10th deadline. It was part of the conversation I had with Kelly a couple of weeks ago where I suggested, hey, put a deadline out there.
Yeah, I actually think we have you to thank in a way for this. Because again, they're super open-ended about a lot of these kinds of like foregone conclusions at times.
That's the history, though. Mm-hmm. Previously they were a black box, so their history is to not disclose anything. They're getting much, much better. Yes. I just want to see continuous improvement, but I would say that I'm optimistic about the prospects of them improving their communication going forward. Yeah,
happily, I'm also certain that you're involved. So that's good. Optimistic and involved are two good things to be.
Hey, that's a gift from them. If I can help in any way, I'm always standing ready to do that. So I appreciate the fact that they even will listen to me on occasion.
So as of this recording, about a month out, April 25th, 2020 LSAT, you'd put the odds at 0?
0.1%.
Always
really
hedging.
0.
Always hedging. And I'm with you. I'm completely in agreement with you. I tend to hedge more than you do.
Yeah, well, I've done this a few times in the last year where I was like, no, this is certain. It's absolute that this will or will not happen. And then they actually went the other way at the last minute. And the last time this occurred, I made it very clear. I was like, I will never say that anything with them is 100% again because I've been bitten twice by this.
Yeah.
And I don't need to recount those. They were not huge incidents. One of them was a score release date where all of a sudden they're like, oh, we're going to release it early.
Yeah. I think it was due to an unforeseen storm in Pennsylvania or someplace.
That's exactly right.
Or New Jersey or something. But yeah, no, I'm with you. It's hard to ever say 0% with them.
It is, but I don't think it's going to happen. This is
about as close to 0% as we can get. I don't think there's any chance there's an April LSAT this year.
Well, the president has just said, oh, we need to stay indoors until April 30th. And when the leadership of the country, using that word loosely, makes that type of comment, what you really need to say to yourself is, all right, if they're starting to wake up to the fact this is serious, because I don't think they were awake to it previously, but they're now awake to it, hopefully, then everything's still going to be closed. People are still going to be inside. College campuses are still being closed. How do you run an LSAT in that environment? So we'll talk about alternatives.
Yeah.
The question is what's the big deal about waiting until April 10th? Why am I, among others, pressing for them to make a decision immediately when one would say, Dave, it's still like 3.5, 4 weeks away. Why do you need the decision now?
Yeah, the test, not the 10th. But, I mean, if it seems foregone, as I've used that word a couple of times, let people know, let schools know, let people start to put into place practices and policies that are, related to that or productive in that degree. If you're not going to have an April score as a student, and we'll talk about what might happen beyond that. If you're not going to have April scores from applicants as a school, wouldn't you want to know that now?
Yep, you would. And if you're a student, because that's who I really care about,
Of course,
not so much the law
yeah.
schools.
Sorry,
no offense to them. Yeah, sorry, deans of law schools.
Deans.
We don't care. Here's your typical student right now. I don't know what's going to happen. I better keep on studying super hard. So I'm already living in a time of uncertainty, and now here's a really big part of my future that's completely uncertain. If you're not going to have it, pull the trigger now so I can start making alternative plans and re-preparing for when I think I might be able to take this.
Exactly. Yeah, it changes your entire study schedule, your prep plans and timelines. I had a student email me, you may have gotten some of this too, over the weekend, saying, look, I'm signed up for April. Do you think it's going to happen? Because I'm going to use that score to negotiate essentially waitlists and scholarships. And they were like, or should I email schools now and try to start having a different conversation?
I think we both got the same message.
We may have. Or we've gotten multiple ones. It's eerily familiar. But my response back was like, look, you got to start making alternative plans.
Yeah. You got to face reality at this point, and that's how I feel about LSAC. I know what you're doing. You're doing the kind of like retreat and withdraw strategy, playing as late as possible. You're going to try to be like Kenny Rogers here, but you got to know when to fold them, buddy.
Know when to fold them, Kenny.
You need to know when to walk away and when to run, and now is the time to run. Because seriously, this is not going to happen. There is just no physical way that people are going to even want to show up, even if you tried to hold it.
Yeah.
It would be a disaster. And get rid of the uncertainty. I don't know how many messages I have received from people who are like, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? I'm like, I've said the same thing since, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. It's not going to occur. Cancel it now.
I've gotten hundreds of those. I know you have too. And my response has been pretty consistent.
Now, there's an immediate alternative question that I get after I say to people, not going to happen in my opinion.
I know what
and that is, what about doing it at home? They talked about an at-home administration option. Can they do that for April?
Right.
Also, my answer, no.
Not a chance.
Not going to happen. And that is because you're talking about a process that is pretty sizable. Can you imagine putting thousands of test takers into a system for the first time with basically no prior testing, a system of proctoring that's already been stressed by LSAT writing? You'd have to go through a different company, really.
Yeah. We just talked about how many people, and this is 20,000 people next month.
Yeah. I have a lot of respect for their technical ability these days. I certainly think they're playing on a much higher platform than they used to be. However, there's some things that are like Herculean, and this is one of them. It's just not going to happen this quickly. Not with the kind of security needs.
Yeah, this is Everest twice. There's just no chance.
With no oxygen.
With no oxygen, yeah. Everest with no bottled oxygen. No Sherpas, no nothing. Yeah, this is
Somebody sent me a message from someone who was like saying, oh, they're for sure going to do in April. And I was like, can I get money on this with you? Because I would love to take your money.
Yeah.
They're not going to do the at-home administration for April. I think April is...
No.
Yeah. April's off the table. It is basically a dead issue. It's a dead man walking. Just like the LSAT scores that people are resurrecting. It's a zombie LSAT. It's dead and it doesn't know it yet.
Yeah. So... let's track the calendar forward. What about
May?
Let's go to May.
Now, May was originally when I was like, hey, add an LSAT here. That was before I saw the country fumble our collective response. I sent you a picture yesterday from the beaches of Hilton Head, which is not where I am at, but I have friends down there, as do you. And the beaches were packed with people.
Yep.
And we both had the same response, which was, this is going to force us to stay in like another 2 months.
Go home, idiots. Go home, Ohio. Cut it out.
Well, you
You
saw
know
this
that's 40% of the people in that picture are Ohioans.
Well, Hilton Head is full of Ohio people. And those of you who don't know anything about Hilton Head, it's a small island off the coast of South Carolina. It's about 2 hours south of Charleston. Obviously, our office is based in Charleston, but prior to that, it was based in Hilton Head, which is, I think, one of the premier resorts in the country. And loved living there. But it's also not where people should be right now, hanging out on the beach in big clusters.
No. Second time I ever met you was in a Hilton Head bar on a Tuesday afternoon around 4 p.m.
Do you remember what you ordered for a drink that day?
I don't, but I'm going to guess it was probably Crown and Diet.
Crown and ginger.
Crown and ginger. Oh, boy.
Is it weird that I actually remember what you ordered?
It's weird that I ordered it, and also weird that you remember.
No,
Maybe that's my drink for the next episode. I haven't had one of those probably since that day.
It should be. I remember that because I was like, Crown and ginger? What is it? I didn't really know. I was like, it's got to be Crown Royal, but I was like, is there something else besides ginger ale? Do those things go together? Of course, it's a real Southern drink that I just hadn't encountered.
That was my post-college days, but not by much. I was 23. Goodness.
It made an impression on me.
Yeah, well.
When you ordered that, I was like, Crown and ginger. I think I ordered one then too. I was like, let me try one.
All right.
And I did like it and still do.
I know. Yeah. Well, there you go. Fantastic.
Anyway.
While we're reminiscing, looking back to the future instead, is there going to be a May administration this year? Do you think they can add a test that wasn't on the calendar originally?
No.
I don't either.
So I'd originally hoped so. But after watching what's going on and the problems and how much longer this is going to go, I don't see that this is going to be something they can add either physically, as in let's go ahead and administer it on tablet at college centers and normal testing locations where everybody shows up in person, or at home. I think May is also too early for an at-home LSAT. So as much as I would have originally loved to have seen it and thought it might be possible, I now no longer think there's any chance whatsoever of them throwing something in May in.
Yeah, to me, this is part and parcel with the idea of how delayed the response has been just across the board here, or how belatedly we've all come to acknowledge the seriousness of this. I think if LSAC had seen this coming in January and been like, this is going to cause a problem into the summer, maybe they could have gotten a jump on some of this.
Hmm.
And I still don't know that physically or logistically they could have done this in person in May. But maybe they could have had a system in place by May to do it remotely or locally, I suppose.
Yeah.
Locally in the sense of like literally at your address. It's too late. They're getting too late a jump on this for that to happen, in my opinion. I know it's yours as well.
Yeah, you and I are of the same exact mind. I think May is a dead issue as well.
Yeah.
And so...
Which, if you can't tell the disappointed tone in our voice, I promise it's there. We want these tests to happen. But,
well, I mean, everybody who's at the tail end of the cycle who was either hoping to improve their position or even get in the pool, they're getting screwed right now.
Yeah, I've got friends, we've got students, everybody's sitting here looking at this and it's like, I actually had a Hail Mary to throw. And they won't let me hike the ball.
Unless you have a prior score that was canceled.
Oh, that, actually, yeah, that's...
It's the Willy Wonka golden ticket.
A little bit.
I had a prior score that turned out pretty good.
Fantastic. I feel like Augustus Gloop. I feel just stuck in a pipe.
Gloop. It's kind of funny because the other night I was listening to some music and Veruca Salt came up. And I always laugh about their band name. I'm
it's
like...
a great name.
I love it when things like that happen. Anyway, so that means that now April and May, no LSAT, in our opinion, not officially, although I expect it very soon.
Do you think they'll even make an official announcement about a no May test? Or do you think they're just going to be like, it was never on the calendar, April's canceled, let's talk about June and just skip it?
They've referenced the idea of adding LSAT administrations as needed. So to their credit, I think they are looking at all the options. They're in scramble mode as well as so many other people. And they're like, what can we do to make this better for both applicants and law schools? So I think they're looking at it, but technically, I don't think they have the capability. And this isn't a knock on them. I don't think there's very many companies that would have the capability in a short time frame to spin something up that would handle thousands and thousands of people. So I just can't see it actually happening, and it's no knock on them. They'll mention it, but
not at all.
I think what we're probably more looking at is what happens with June and whether June is affected and then the consequences of that.
So there are a couple of different test dates in June. There's the 8th, which is the North American date, and there's the 27th, 28th weekend, which is the international testing dates. Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, etc. I've been getting questions about this. I know you have too.
Many.
So let me ask you one more. What do you think happens? June 8th is not that far away, man.
I really wish it was a late June test.
Me too.
And I think you can take the domestic US-Canada test and separate it from the international test.
It's about 3 weeks different, yeah.
Yeah, the 8th to the 27th. I guess my feeling right now, somebody said put money on it. And it's, it's either red or black. It's a roulette wheel. There's no green. I'd probably say that I don't think it's going to happen.
So, it's not red or black. It's red or black if there's more red or black. You think it's actually less than 50-50?
I do think it's less than 50% that it happens, but I'm going to say this, and hopefully it's really clear. I don't know. Nobody knows. LSAC doesn't know. It all depends upon how people act and react and what happens with the virus over the next, couple of months.
2 months, yeah.
I would love for it to happen, and what I would love for it to really happen is June goes off as normal and as expected. Law schools realize a bunch of applicants thought that they could take March or April and get in under the window, so we're going to just automatically extend deadlines into July. And we got to work a little bit later into the summer, and probably a lot harder than they really want to, but that's what we're going to do because everybody's been affected by this in a terrible, terrible way. That's what I'd like to see happen. Yeah. I just think the chances of it actually occurring are 50-50 at best.
Yeah, me too. It's weird to think about best case scenarios in that way, but I think that's about a best case scenario. Law schools extend deadlines. June maybe happens. Do you think June could be pushed back?
Yes. I think that is one of the first steps that might occur is they might say, we're going to take June 8th and we're going to push it back a couple of weeks. I think that's a really reasonable thing to do. Do I think they're going to do that anytime soon? No way.
No.
They haven't even decided about April. To them, one of the benefits of having this April 10th deadline is they don't have to take questions about June. Because when I say to people, I think it's going to get canceled, the first question they ask is, well, what about June?
Right, yeah. What's next? What about May? What about June? Yeah.
Yeah, they don't want to take these questions.
There is no May, and I don't think there will be. And June is dodgy at best. Yeah. Do you think they could have an at-home test in place by June?
And here the chances go way up.
Yeah, me too. I agree.
And I think in their minds, they have to be looking at June thinking, if we're going to be able to do an at-home test, that's the test we want to target. They'd really love to be able to do it by June if it is needed. Yeah. Obviously, July being the fallback on that. But a really good way to do this is to say, all right, that June 8th test, we're going to postpone it and we're going to make it at home, 2 to 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would get bent out of shape over them doing something like that because, again, everybody's very reasonable about this is nuts. They know that this is completely unprecedented.
Especially if law schools could extend deadlines to accommodate that. Yeah, that to me is, again, it's weird to talk about best case in this, but that to me is probably as good as we could hope for here.
If April gets canceled, I think that's what we'll see is law schools say, all right, we're going to start accepting June. Mm-hmm. Not all of them, because some schools, the Harvards of the world are probably like, yeah, we're good, man. We already had a bunch of applicants already, and they're all really great. I don't know why I'm against Harvard today, but they're my target.
No, I love it. It's a little anti-Harvard. It's a lot anti-political today. I like it.
No, just response, man.
I mean, it's just, you call it like you see it. I don't see how you'd see it otherwise.
Everybody in the world wanted our response to be fantastic to this, and I just, having been on top of this for a while, I just wish it was better. But
yeah, well, I've given you enough credit in the past few episodes for how prescient you've been. You've been positively South Korean in this, which is
it's better than being positively North Korean about it.
Yes, yes, that's definitely the case.
So, do I think June could happen as a at-home test? I'd say there's about 50-50 chance. If they push it back, those chances would rise. If I saw them delay the June test, I would think to myself, bet the chances are pretty good. They're trying to finalize the at-home version. If for some reason none of that happens, no June LSAT in person, no June LSAT at home, I would expect the July LSAT to either be at home or in person, and it would work either way.
Yeah, you'd have to think by July they'd have some kind of contingency. That's 3 straight tests they would have canceled.
Yeah. And it's, unfortunately for them, these are tests that are all bunched very closely together. That would be March, April, and June. That's a lot of tests in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
And as we've said previously, in the past, there was no March or April test.
Right.
This wouldn't have been an issue a few years ago, but now it is. And so they're going to have to deal with the fact that there were expectations of people to be able to take these exams.
And schools to have the people who took them. So, yeah, it changes the dynamics. The calculus really is affected top to bottom.
Yeah, and I think the international tests have a fairly decent chance of going off at the end of June.
Which are June 27th and 28th.
Yeah.
For anyone who missed that point earlier. Yeah.
I think we're going to have to still wait and see because we don't want to have like secondary outbreaks. But if you were in a place like South Korea, it feels as if there's a decent chance that test in June would actually happen. I'd give that a higher chance than I would the U.S. test just because of the dates.
Let me ask you one question related to that and then something broader, if you'll indulge me.
This sounds like fun.
It might not be, we'll see. Do you think, given all of that, it would be maybe worth someone's while or advisable for them to start to look at international test dates where they could actually travel someplace late June and take it? Or do you think that's premature? I only ask that because someone literally asked me that over the weekend, where they're like, dude, should I start to look at like a South Korean test date? That wasn't the country they were going to, but.
Okay, so first off, it's premature.
Yeah, okay. That's what I said too. I was like, just sit tight. We'll know more about this in the next few weeks.
Deep-seated paranoia operating there. Secondarily, if the U.S. test has not gone off or can't go off due to the conditions here, you really think you're going to be able to fly to another country?
That's a really good point now, isn't it?
Yeah. We're looking at a situation where we now have the most number of cases in the world. Things are about to get a lot grimmer, in my opinion. And I'm certainly not alone in that. We may very well be the country that is quarantined from the rest of the world come June, where people don't want Americans or Canadians, if they have a similar problem. I hope not.
We built Canada. A wall, all right.
Canada's going to build a wall against us.
In. All right. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. If we can't run a test on the 8th of June here, are you really going to travel somewhere on the 25th of June elsewhere? No. Probably not.
You're going to be stuck here. You won't have that option. So I don't really think you're going to just have to look at this for what it is. Just totally unexpected. A year ago, we wouldn't have been thinking about this as even like a reasonable possibility. And so you're just going to have to be flexible about it. And it honestly sucks because it could cost somebody a year of their life in terms of being in stasis.
When you can even start law school or apply to law school. That's my actual next question. So you've kind of tossed me an alley-oop there.
All right.
Yeah, nice work. Mm-hmm. Mind meld. What do you do if you're a March or an April registrant? And again, April's still up in the air. What do you do if you're someone who is either counting on one of those scores to apply or trying to use that data to essentially affect your admission decision or your money decisions? What do you do if you're essentially in that kind of flux?
Okay. 2 different groups there.
Yeah.
So the first group is, I don't have a score. I was hoping to get in the game in March or April. Short-term answer, you're screwed. All right.
I knew you were going to say it, but I was like, is there a better way to put it? There's really not.
You're screwed. What your hope is at this point, at the point April gets canceled, is that the June test somehow goes off in whatever form, and that law schools wake up and extend deadlines specifically to allow test takers such as yourself to still apply.
Yeah.
All right. So that you get screwed, and then you hope for, I'm not going to call it a Hail Mary because I don't think it is, but certainly hope for reason to prevail. So that's the first thing.
Yeah, you hope for a number of things, frankly. You hope that June can even run.
Yeah.
Home, later, whatever. And then you hope the law schools are accommodating to that.
Yeah, if June doesn't happen, then you really are screwed.
You're almost certainly out a year.
There may be, I can't remember which school it was that I saw that said, we will take applications all the way up until August. And I should have written it down. I have it someplace. But they were like, we understand the situation and we're going to extend it into August. And I was like, in fact, they deserve a shout out. Maybe I'll have to find it.
We'll maybe throw a note in here at some point. The fact that there's even any kind of precedent for that is remarkable and wonderful to them, whoever you are.
And they were like, we will go till August. And if that's what it is, that's what it is. If we have to take July for it, we'll do it. I was like, great attitude.
It's
and
awesome, yeah.
Really nice approach. Anybody applying to that school, unnamed great school.
Unnamed great school.
With good policy.
Placeholder school here. Yeah.
Policymakers who actually have vision. They're immediately comforted by that. Like, oh, okay, I'm not screwed here. Yeah. So that would be your only hope at that point, was that July would go off and that you could use that at some of these schools. And I'm telling you right now, I'm sure there's law school admissions professionals out there who are like, no way. But come a couple of months when more LSATs are canceled and things are looking bad, their attitude might be like, I'll take anybody I can get at any point in time. We're open for business all the way up until the first day of school, and maybe even the first 2 weeks of school.
All right, let's pretend the positively worst case, which is the second half of this question, which is, let's say you can't take an LSAT this year, but maybe you've got either an application in with a score, you can resurrect your score. You've got the ability, at least right now, to apply. You can't do March, which you were hoping for. You can't do April, which I think is almost certain. What do you do if you're at least in the pipeline already with numbers?
And you were trying to improve your position?
Yeah, exactly. Like your opportunity to improve who you are is gone, so you are who you are.
You first off find out what your results are, and then you make a decision. Mm-hmm. You don't have any other choice. You're not going to improve your position. Is there a way to
change your waitlist status, your application for scholarships, let's say? Do you think schools are going to be receptive to people who they maybe initially were less receptive to?
They should be.
I would agree. I think it almost has to be the case. I was talking to a student about this on Friday, where she asked me, I may have asked you too, as often happens, unfortunately, what does this do to my status if there's no March numbers coming in? She wasn't even registered for March.
I know exactly who you're talking about. And it's a legitimate question on her part. She's like, I think that it was actually framed like, is this terrible thing that's occurring right now actually a good thing for me?
Right.
And kind of like, did I somehow get a silver lining to this, what is obviously a terrible condition that we're all enduring at this point?
Yeah. And I never got the vibe from her that she was happy about all of this.
Oh, no, not at all.
It was more like, is there an upside?
She was just being a realist about it, and I was a realist in response. Yeah. If you already have really good numbers, what's happened here at the end is that a bunch of people who might have been able to improve by a couple of points and eke out some more money or maybe pull themselves off the wait list, they're losing that opportunity. And some schools out there take a tremendous proportion of students off the wait list. A big part of their classes come from the waitlist. And what's happening is that the quality of these last-minute applicants, waitlist, borderline applicants, there is not the opportunity to improve their position as there normally is on a year-to-year basis.
Right.
So if you're already applied and you're basically done, this helps you, especially at those upper-level schools where there's really no give in terms of like the medians and things like that, or very little give.
April was going to be a big movement month this year, I think.
Yeah.
And a lot of that movement was going to come on the heels of March and April scores, which no longer very likely exist. March for sure.
There's also a financial aid wave that comes out of this. If I was applying to T14 schools and I was at 168 and I could have bumped up to 170 in April, and then I come trying to renegotiate my financials, and they're like, okay, we'll give you this. Well, that's not happening. So that money is still there.
Right.
Or, maybe someone else can ask for it. Maybe they can be more generous with somebody they're accepting at the end of the cycle. It has all these effects that they're not simple. They're very complex and complicated.
Very complicated, right? Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I will say, though, anyone who's listening to this who finds themselves in that particular position, and I imagine there are plenty of you, if you've applied and you're sitting there thinking you were either going to improve in March or you were competing against people who might against you, this is good news for you in a way. Potentially.
It doesn't have to be bad.
Right.
Although I think anybody who was thinking about taking one of those tests was like, no, I was going to score better. I felt good about it. So now I've lost my opportunity. But
Yeah,
just keep
those
this
who are
in mind.
registered for those tests almost certainly are devastated by the opportunity lost.
No doubt.
But those who aren't, who are just sitting in the pipeline still wondering, as the person we're referring to most certainly is, those people are likely benefited by this.
Yeah.
In that very narrow respect, again, I want to make very clear. I don't think anyone's looking at this as like, thank goodness. But in that one regard, it could be a good thing.
This brings home one last comment, which is that everybody's affected by this who had registered. It's also why I think the idea of having the LSAT in some places, like some people have said, well, in Montana, we don't have too much of a problem, so let's hold the LSAT in Montana and then just cancel it in New York.
Right.
I don't love the fairness of that either.
It's wildly unfair.
I hate that proposal. I understand it, but I also think that everybody everywhere should be in their house, not at the beach or wherever they might be. That's non-essential. Stay at home. Stay away from me. Stay away from yourselves.
Meanwhile, I'm running a quarantine camp upstairs, so if anybody just is in LA, bored.
John's visitor, stay away from him. Get out of there.
This place is riddled with it, so come by. Come join. Lick the walls.
Yeah, you're fine. So
I'll be all right.
I think that kind of sums it up, though. We're very negative and dark about April. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think May's an option. June, now we're getting to like 50-50, and I think your best option is probably an at-home administration. By July, I think they'll have an at-home administration, and I think we'll see a bunch of deadlines get loosened, extended, etc. once LSAC makes what I think is the inevitable call, and you agree with me on this, to cancel April. I've
learned better than to disagree with you on any of this. You've been positively Nostradamus. I called you South Korean before, now Nostradamus. I'm full of obscure compliments today.
I don't want to be right about any of this.
I know, man.
Love to be completely wrong.
So far, you've just got quite a track record. Anyway, I'm on board with you on all that stuff. Sorry for anyone out there signed up for April, because I'm pretty sure we're right. If you're in the pipeline, though, right now, this could actually work to your benefit. If I'm going to try to infuse this with any kind of positivity,
a little bit.
That's as good as I can do.
All right, I think that closes it out. I think that covers all the possibilities of what they've talked about recently and how that might affect various people. So
I agree.
Let's go ahead and call it a day. I'm going to actually make another one of these 57 Chevys. Pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I love it. I've always liked that drink, even though it really made me incredibly sick when I first drank it. Wow. Usually, like with tequila, people are like, I'm never drinking that again. My response is, that was pretty tasty. That's why I drank so much of it.
That was a great night. What are you talking about?
It really was. All right. If you get a chance, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube, or anywhere else you may find it. Give us a rating. Send us any questions you have as well. We're starting to get those more and more frequently about this situation. You can send that to LSAT at powerscore.com or LSAT podcast at powerscore.com as well. So on behalf of John and myself, stay at home, stay away from everybody, and stay safe, most importantly. Thanks so much.